We have a number of events that we hold. Last year we had 156 events in this room, so we've been playing a role in thought leadership in the space, which has been really fruitful and important for the wider community. We have a co-working space if anyone's interested in hot desking, and that's been a very worthwhile experience for the wider community, with at least 4 POCs, proof of concepts, that we did with that community last year. And then we also run accelerator programs. Between accelerators at the moment, we used to work with Techstars, who were wonderful, and this year we're bringing it in-house and sort of narrowing down into agri-tech and financial inclusion as verticals. So that's just a little bit of a snapshot of what we do here. Obviously, all the new cutting-edge technologies play into the work that we do here. So we do focus our events on these kind of emerging technologies like blockchain, like today, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and big data. So we're very keen on keeping up to date with that, so it's great to have you all here. Jacques has been a very important member of our community and has helped us tremendously in building up the sort of expertise and network around machine learning. So he's kind of old hat at these events, and I'm basically going to hand over to him completely for this morning. The idea around today was just to have a little bit of a snapshot around what some of the emerging trends and patterns and opportunities there are in this particular sector, to draw on this expertise of a handful of really lovely people that have offered to speak for us this morning. And Jacques will moderate that and just kind of, make a concise summary of what those opportunities are. And then afterwards, there's an opportunity for a little bit more coffee and some muffins, and you get to kind of chat to each other, which is probably the most valuable part of these kind of meetups. So hope you enjoy the morning. If there are any questions around how ABSA runs the hub, or you are a startup or an investor and you'd like to be linked into the community, please come to chat to me or Charmaine afterwards. Charmaine just want to wave so everyone knows who you are. So thank you, and enjoy the morning. Jacques, are you okay?
Yeah. Thanks very much. Let's just see you with the studio. First of all, welcome. So the core of what we want to do today is going to be a interactive panel discussion. We want to involve as many of you as possible with this. So I think while they're trying to organize a TV screen here, so we can maybe show some stuff there. But all I wanted to do was to actually I just want to seed some of the thoughts around opportunities and pitfalls around AI. I've got some really cool slides, which I'll make available afterwards as well, so we can talk through it. But I think the core of this is going to be a panel discussion. So I'm excited about the people here. So we've got Ryan here, we've got Charles, we've got Megan. I'm going to moderate that. Last week we had an awesome event at Midrand at PwC, where there was about 100 people there, and it was really talked about. Also very interesting panel, good panel discussion, and on a similar kind of topic. So this is kind of a Cape Town event. Very thankful for Rise, the fact that we've, as Camilla mentioned, we had many events here. If you go to the Machine Intelligence Africa.org website, you will see some links to video presentations. The actual presentations is a valuable resource of great material. So most welcome to go there as well. And the things that I wanted to show, I just want to pop up quickly the Machine Intelligence Africa.org website, go to the events page, show you what's going on. What I also did, if you're not connected with me on LinkedIn, you're most welcome to do this. I'm Jacques Ludik. And you will see there's one of the latest posts that I've just posted over the weekend. It's kind of a summary of all the events that happened the last few months. Very exciting. And there's some very exciting upcoming events. One of them is obviously AI Expo and stuff. We've got these guys, Nick and Roy, also here. And we're very excited about that. There's also some very exciting events. I've been invited to the United Nations to present to Africa and MIIA next month as well. We were going to talk about AI for good, AI for sustainable goals. I would love to, obviously it's going to be a learning experience just talking about that. We live in an incredibly exciting time where you see a lot of disruption happening. You see platform businesses coming to the fore. You see corporates that's really kind of anxious as well about what's happening here, and they are trying to figure out how to change their business models, how to to look at, well, there's competitors from everywhere. You think you're to this business, but maybe you need to change your business models. And I think there's a lot of the business models is around data and data monetization and stuff. So we are really looking forward to discuss all of that. Ryan will be talking a bit more about the future. Okay, here we go. So fantastic. So he's got he hooked up here. So awesome. So let me just see if this thing works. Otherwise, let me use this. Good old mouse. There we go. Let's put this into presentation mode. Full screen. There we go. Okay, so just very briefly. So thanks to Rise, this is what I wanted to show, and I just wanted to also show the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa what we are all about. So it's an innovative community and accelerator for machine intelligence and data science to help transform Africa. So my personal massive transformative purpose is around how to shape a better future in the smart technology era. And I should, that's why this is on. So I'll just switch it off. So it's really around how can we create a better future. And you can see where it fits in with the Machine Intelligence Institute of Africa. I've got also a company called Cortex Logic that provides an AI engine for platform businesses and corporates to help them transform. So very excited about that. And I think this is just some of the partners, over 2,050 registrations across the MIIA channels. So maybe just like that so that everybody can see. And you can see the growth path. So this is what I've been talking about. If you go to the website, you will see a bunch of events happening in the rest of the year, and a lot of stuff happened this year, which is very, very exciting. This is just background on me. That is just summarizing what I'm focusing really on. Obviously, when I talk about the smart technology era, it's actually the fourth industrial revolution. So there's a lot of talks about it. Even Cyril Ramaphosa talked about it in his initial speech. So very exciting to see that governments are thinking about this. You know that France, the president also talked about this. China, Russia, US, Canada, everywhere. There's some really serious attentions. I don't know who's seen it's worthwhile listening to this. There was an AI session. There was a hearing at the US Congress on YouTube. It was just the other day. It's worthwhile. There's 3 parts to it. It's worthwhile listening to that. We've got some experts talking about various aspects that's very relevant to our discussion here in terms of the future of work, talk about security, cybersecurity, and it's worthwhile listening to that. It's about an hour and a half each, but it's really good. And there were some interesting questions from the senators and just talking about AI and the impact and so forth. So it's really cool to see this, all the attention. I'm going to skip some of the slides. This is just showing the AI, giving a little bit of background. So Ryan is going to talk about the future of work, and so I'm just laying a little bit of foundations here. This is a slide that I normally show in terms of just what's AI. Obviously, it's just developing machines and software with intelligence. If you think about machine learning, that's effectively systems that can learn from data. You get other types of rules-based statistical approaches, and that's all part of that toolbox. Even if you think about AlphaGo, AlphaZero, the results that was achieved by DeepMind, Google DeepMind, awesome, incredible results where they were able to get superhuman performance in games like Go and so forth, chess and shogi and so forth. That is engineering effort combined with deep reinforcement learning plus Monte Carlo search. So it's like good old-fashioned AI plus machine learning, effectively. So the opportunity, when we talk about opportunities, I think we've got an incredible rich toolbox that can deal with structured and unstructured data, but also opportunity to engineer solutions with that rich toolbox. So that's what that is about. So I'll skip that. You can see the machine intelligence landscape. You get startups, and even here at Rise, I was a mentor here at Rise, Techstars, and there's a number of companies that's focusing on various industries or areas in enterprise. So all of this is just startups. This was put up by Bloomberg Beta in 2015, and since then, there's been 3 versions of this kind of landscape. But the point here is rethinking enterprise, rethinking industries, rethinking human-computer interface. So incredible, exciting opportunities to revolutionize things. This is just 3.0, the latest version of that. So I'm going to skip. I just maybe want to say, when we talk about opportunities, I think it's important to look at what it means for business. It's nice to talk about blockchain, AI, all these kind of things, but it starts here with the business drivers. So it's really all about increasing operational efficiency, effectiveness, revenue, creating strategic value with your data, enhancing the customer experience, more targeted sales and marketing. Megan, you've been doing quite a bit of work on that side as well, so we can talk about in this discussion. But this is, I think, where it starts. And what we do at Cortex is really to put fully end-to-end solutions in place. The smart data layers, the automated AI, and then taking that AI, integrating that into the business, into your work processes, into your omni-channels, etc. Ryan has got a company called Clever, which is a digital virtual assistant, and it fits into that end-to-end type of solutions. And doing work for call centers, and you can maybe refer to some of that as well. Anyway, so we've got a solution, so I'm going to skip some of that. So this is the stuff that we shared last, just to see the discussion. So when we talk about opportunities and pitfalls, I mentioned the business value drivers, but also if you think, it's all about demonstration of value and to operationalize. How do you operationalize it? So this particular talk is all about the rest of it, all about how to operationalize it, how to make it impactful. And for companies, it means you can assess your organizational maturity, you can look at your organizational readiness, and we help companies with those type of things as well. But when we talk about opportunities, you need to think about your strategy, your intent, your technology, processes, data, and people. And in that way, if you do it properly, you can actually accelerate your whole smart digital transformation path effectively. And I've got quite a bit of rich material around those type of things. So for me, that's one really important part of it. But I think also important that you create the best possible environment for top talent and collaborative innovation. And also there's a need for modern data science skill sets with data, BI, AI, software development teams. And this is kind of what we're focusing on, not looking at things in isolation. And there was just a focus on, this is just showing the opportunities from an AI, IoT. IoT is a big source of data. So obviously if you think about wearables, I've got one slide that's not here, but it's talking about showing the exponential generation of data. And you see data utilization, and that gap is increasing, even today with cloud computing and all this stuff. So there's a big need to close that gap and to unlock the potential and value. And here we're talking about this. This is almost kind of, it can be mapped to that earlier slide where I talked about examples of big data value drivers. New business models with your data. Real-time information in mission-critical systems, that's possible, driven by IoT and wearables and stuff. Diversification of revenue streams, global visibility, efficient, intelligent operations, so automating things, so great opportunities with that. And this is the thing that we also talked about. If you think about the top AI technology trends, I'll make the slides available if it's too small for people to see. But the point here is there's some very exciting stuff in the AI toolbox that's evolving. And it's almost like every quarter you see new breakthroughs. So opportunities to use that to actually solve problems. And this is some of the things that was highlighted by PwC as well. And I can go into each one of this. This is a presentation on its own. Okay, so I think without further ado, maybe the last thing I want to say is this is a slide from one of the consulting companies as well. On the y-axis, we've got innovation, and then on the x-axis, we've got collaboration. Now, what they've done here is to look at companies, get information from them. A lot of companies, 56%, sits in the observer category, where from an innovation perspective and collaboration perspective. Then there was 14% doing some innovation, and there was about 13% doing collaboration, and only 17% doing collaborative innovation. And to move quick, to move fast, and it's about being agile. And I think the World Economic Forum president was saying that it's not the big fish that eats the small fish, it's the fast fish that eats the slow fish. And that's what you're seeing with rapid, these kind of platform businesses as well. So if you want to move quicker, collaborative innovation is the way to go. And even the big companies like PwC, Deloitte, McKinsey's and stuff also realize that they're being disrupted and they collaborate. So we've got a JBR, joint business relationship with them as well to help accelerate them as well. But companies, corporates, has the opportunity to move quicker, and I think it makes sense to partner with the right partner. So that's just recommended as well. Okay, so without further ado, I think Ryan, are you ready? So just to talk about the future of work. And I think that's going to be important because it's going to be a discussion in our panel. We're going to talk about it in the panel. So do you want to slide? You just want to talk? Yeah, brilliant. Okay, awesome.
John, I can also chat.
Yeah, yes, perfect. So, so Charles will be right after that. Okay, thanks. So Ryan, please introduce yourself and go for it. Thanks.
Hi everyone, I'm Ryan Falkenberg. I'm co-founder of a company called MIIA. My interest is from the humanist side. Many of you might be technologists at heart, and we've just seen one of the top technologists in the space of AI. I come from a different angle, and that is to understand the impact of technology on the human system, and what's it going to mean for society, for my children, for organizations, and how do we then use technology to make us actually better people, better societies, and more successful. So the challenge we have with this whole AI space is that there's an incredible amount of excitement around how we digitize decision-making architectures just so that essentially we can remove humans out of the business system. It's a cost layer that many organizations are actively trying to remove. And one of the things that I find concerning with that approach is it's really looking at AI, I think, from an either-or perspective. I truly believe the augmented focus areas is actually where most of the adoption will take place. Mainly because we are already human systems. Big organizations carry huge numbers of staff, and they can't just turn around and suddenly become a digital play. If they try and do that, my feeling is that they will be completely outcompeted by somebody that doesn't carry the legacy in terms of the system architectures, in terms of the human architectures. So in a way, the big human systems needs to find ways to take AI and make human beings, the existing human capital, more powerful, because if they simply try and create a digital version of themselves, I feel they will fail. So what does that mean for people, though? Because fundamentally, staff are, I believe, totally ill-equipped for this change. Our previous, from the industrial era to the knowledge era, and the knowledge era through, we've been almost allowed to do incremental change. Technology here has allowed us simply to optimize historical models. What I find interesting about AI is we are now into the phase of transformational change. Nothing that we do in the past can be the same. And that's quite a significant shift in how we tackle this technology revolution. Here's an example. From the industrial era, if we look at the four core systems that influence our world, the economic systems, the political systems, the social systems, and the technical systems. Those systems had two, I believe, primary constructs that drove them. The one was a core paternalism. Everything about those systems related to a power play, and it was usually a masculine power play. The next was a compliance. Everything was around compliance. So if you look at, for example, in the political space, as far back as royalty, the king typically was masculine. He owned the truth. His truth was the law, and the job of the rest of society was to execute that truth. So it was an important role for society to not question truth, but rather be a replication engine of truth. If you were somebody who said, listen, Your Highness, I don't actually agree with what you're saying. I think you need to look at it from a different angle. There tended to be very negative consequences coming your way. In military structures, we had the same. Generals owned the truth. It was a strategic view. They had more stars on their shoulders than somebody else. And we had hierarchical parental models. And whoever owned that truth could dictate the strategy, and the role of everyone else was to execute. If you, on the battlefield again, said, listen, I think you've got it wrong, General. We should be going left. You just said right. You've got a bullet in your back. So actually there was very negative consequences as the rest of society to question the power play. In the environments of home, father figures owned the truth. They were completely dominant. Even the mother had the power dynamics were against her. And so a good child was a child that listened and executed, and a child that didn't listen or ask difficult questions was a stroppy child. Typically, that was the model. So what we then did is, in all of our systems, we needed to code human beings to handle those systems. So we created education systems that were very good at coding compliance. We used a paternalistic construct. So we created a parent role in all of our education models. We called them teachers or lecturers or whatever. And they owned the truth. It was called biology, math, science, etc. It was a formula that they wished everyone to know. It wasn't up for debate, it was up for replication. And we then focused on IQ as the primary differentiator in our children's coding mechanism, their brain. Because IQ allows us to onboard information quicker and better than most, and then to replicate it in multidimensional or multi-contextual environments. If I can learn Pythagoras' theorem, and I can apply it to many different environments, I have a high IQ and I win out of that model. In addition, if I'm the child that sits and listens to the parent and gives them back what they gave me, I'm rewarded. If I then say, but teacher, I don't actually think that's right, or I ask those difficult questions, I'm the problem child and I get penalized. If I want to become a prefect, I'm the person who must do what the system said of me, and I need to replicate. So compliance to a paternalistic formula was how we coded human societies. And we use education systems to reward our children in that behavior. So what started to happen in the knowledge economy was a very interesting dynamic, and that was that the power of information started to move into technology. We started to be able to get information through the internet. And suddenly that power dynamic could shift, because I, as the little person, could access information that was typically not allowed or could be prevented from me getting. And suddenly I could learn from others, and actually we could start becoming powerful together. That little change fundamentally shifted the axis of those mechanisms. However, it didn't do it in a transformational way, it was incremental. So what we started to see is the small person started to actually have the ability to do a lot more. We had, for example, a Harvard student creating one of the most valuable companies in the planet simply through an idea. We had the ability to, for example, have political systems be taken down by previously the little people in the Arab Spring, simply because they had technology that allowed them an individual voice. They could talk to each other and they could collaborate and they could start creating their own views. What you started seeing in family structures is that the successful, sustainable family structures were those where the parent actually started to talk to the kid and learn from the kid. We started to see two-way learning systems emerging, where I would listen to my child because actually they knew stuff I didn't know, and if I could learn from them, they could learn from me, and we actually became powerful together. So we started to see these models in which the little person role started to contribute into the big person's learning. We even saw that in the largest paternalistic structure in the planet, the American Army, when, for example, in the Afghan space, they had to learn very different warfare techniques that they hadn't learned in the Vietnam space. What they had to do is actually ask their troops to tell them what the hell's going on there, because the rules were changing very quickly. And actually, the people on the ground were teaching the parent role what to do and how to do it, and so these mechanisms started to shift. We talked about learning organization mechanisms. But what's been interesting is that we carried on coding human brains in the same way. All we did is we took technology and we made a version of our previous plan. We took training materials and we made them e-courses. We took classrooms, we made them LMSs. We took assessments, we made them e-assessments. And we took the paternal role again, and we just ensured that you learned it in a far more cost-effective way. But all we did is we made information digitally available for your upload. The human brain's job was still to upload it, was still to learn it and replicate it. If you look at all the jobs in most of the human systems, they are replication jobs. In a contact center, the agent has very little influence over differentiating that experience. The questions they ask and the answers they give are prescribed to them. Their challenge is understanding context, but they have no ability to influence the answers. Everything else they give is wrong. So what we are finding is they are actually robots with flesh. We are making humans robots with flesh. We've always done it. And so we penalize them for any non-compliance. In sales, in financial sales, we teach people to ask need-based questions, to offer the following questions, answers, and cross-sell the following products. It's a formula. It's totally and utterly driven by formula. They have no value add. What we talk to them about is create customer engagement experience, etc., but most of their brain is nowhere near that. Most of their brain is in the back office doing replication formulas, saying, if I said that, what did that process say? What did that product rule say? And did I cross-sell it accordingly? It's pure replication. In technical diagnostics, engineers, you can name it. Think of any job. The majority is about a human brain replicating a compliance formula in a way that the business wants. So now what's starting to happen with digital intelligence is that exact role that allowed us to actually have any value is now being taken away from us. Because anything that can be replicated in a way that creating precision, compliance, and consistency will be undigital. It is a formula. It is simply going to be given, we'll be given a digital brain, and it will replace us. So in a country like South Africa, in which we have massive employment problems, and in Africa, what then? Why would I employ anybody if I can create a digital brain that will do exactly my bidding? When historically I've asked human robots to do that. Well, the only way that we can essentially redefine the human future is to look at how we can, instead of replacing you, is how we can augment you, how we can make you more powerful, how we can understand your differentiating value proposition that is different to the technical differentiating value proposition. And what I find very interesting is that's a shift from the left brain to the right brain. It is a start of an emergence of a new consciousness in the human psyche. It is allowing us not to grow up as robotic human beings which completely lack any form of consciousness, but actually just to move into a higher level of thinking. Our future is bright with AI if we can understand what we really are about as human beings. What we have found historically is because of this need for replication, we have lived our lives in what we call the lower brain space. It is the brain of automation. It is the brain that when we were in historic ages, it was the brain that made us successful and where our genes passed on. So when I was walking through as one of the hominids and I actually heard some crackling of the grass, to the person or the being that moved quickest up a tree that was saved from that line. Their genes passed. It wasn't a conscious decision, it was an automated decision. That automation is how we learn. We learn automation behavior. So when I drove here today, very little of my brain energy was worrying about my gears, was worrying about most things. I was in automation mode. I was actually thinking about a whole lot of other things. In fact, when I'm at work, most of the time I'm non-conscious and I'm just in automation mode. When I get home, part of my challenge is that if I'm in automation mode, my children don't have anything on me because I'm not there for them. We live in non-conscious worlds. We have become totally and utterly overwhelmed as a human species by the demands placed on us. As a result, we are all moving down into our lower brain survival mechanisms. What you're starting to see as a result in America and other environments is that extremism is becoming the norm. What extremism, populism, all of those isms do is they allow us to simplify complexity. They allow us to say, this is black and white, this is right, this is wrong. You start seeing religious extremism. You'll start seeing a kickback in terms of views in terms of sexual liberalism. All of these plays are about it's them versus us. It gives the human ability the ability to make simple decisions in a complex world. And so we're starting to actually see the human systems degenerating because we are not coping with the speed at which this change is happening to us. It is a very important stage in our evolution. We are historically being trapped by biological evolution, which is over many, many hundreds of years. We'll see incremental change. We've moved through a social evolution where essentially our software was able to be recoded within a lifetime. I could get a child, I could get two twins, I could code one child with values, with thinking in one way, and I could code them with another child in extremism, whatever, and they will behave completely differently. I can reprogram human minds in one generation. The software can be version controlled. In the next generation, we are looking at complete hardware and software reboots. I can actually get a new heart, a new limbs. I can essentially get a new hardware structure here. Plus, I can recode my brain. So as humanity, we keep having to now ask ourselves, what the hell are we here for? And who are we? And why we even have a purpose? Why am I telling you this? Well, essentially, I think it's important when we think of AI is to really deeply understand what the hell we're doing here and why we're here, because that technology defines our future. But it offers us a liberation moment. It offers us the ability to stop being trapped in a world of replication, to stop being asked to learn as a child how to think like a parent, to be asked to think differently, to move into the consciousness world, to start learning to work in the upper brain territory. It is the brain that I find most exhausting to operate in, and it is the brain that is my only defense mechanism against AI, because it is the brain that allows me as a human being to recode myself. I can, for example, ask deep questions about why I do things and start repatterning myself only in the upper brain. I don't go there because it demands huge energy, and I was never trained on it. Schools don't train it. Education systems don't train it. We are trained in the lower brain mechanisms. So, for example, my children recently have been giving, quite a few months ago, giving me a lot of pressure around me being heavy into nature and worrying about this planet's future. And then we saw quite a few programs on meat and the implication of farming on the animal spirit and the implications, and they say to you, you're a hypocrite. And I had to ask some questions. I said, I'm a South African Okie that loves brines. I love meat, but I'm talking a truth that I don't live. There's a disconnect, and I'm being shown by my damn children. I needed to actually make a decision, so I stopped eating, for example, beef and pork. I hate it, but I've stopped it, and I'm learning about reprogramming my brain and my patterns around how I see that. It is exhausting, but it's important for me, because if I can learn how to change my behavior fundamentally by changing my belief systems, I can actually start realigning who I am and what I do. That is my future power play. So what I believe is that for all of us, we can get excited about how AI works and how it predicts and how it automates. It will do it for us. It will. What I think we have an opportunity to do is ask ourselves human questions around what then do we do to add value? How do we change contact centers so that human beings become the interface that differentiates between digital interfaces? That warmth, that empathy, that psychology is what I seek, not the answers. The answers are the same. When I go to a sales context, I look for relationships, engagement, the value add of humanity. I don't look for the same questions, the same answers. That will be done for me. So I believe, and so our future and what I do in our company is we look at AI within the human systems. How do we augment human beings so that they become way more powerful than digital front ends? That they can answer the same questions, they can give the same answers. They just do it differently. They do it with a way that differentiates us and adds value. So hopefully in these conversations, we can talk more around that. Is the interest level of how do we get human organizational systems to adopt AI in a way that's production ready, available, but then how do we migrate human beings to adopt this and thrive rather than fail in a world that's hitting them very quickly.
Great. Thanks, Ryan. I think that was awesome. We've got that captured as well. We want to share with more people. I think it's an awesome message that also fits in beautifully, even with my massive transformative purpose around how to shape a better future in a smart technology era. And those are things that's so important. We need to adjust. And we need to collaborate in a proper way because it's coming. It's like a runaway train, technology and AI and all of it. And we need to shape that better future. Charles, Dr. Charles Copley. So Ryan Falkenberg, CEO of Clever. Now we've got Dr. Charles Copley. So give the floor. We can also keep it short because we've got the panel discussion next. We obviously a little bit late. But thanks, Charles. Looking forward to your talk.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so can we stand here?
Yeah, put the camera.
Okay. So sorry, I do have a bit of a cold, so I might not project it.
No, that's right.
Yeah, so Charles Copley. That's my name. I'm a recovering academic. So I can see that we're going to have some interesting discussions here. So yeah, basically I've been working in sort of data science and machine learning space for the last maybe 3 or 4 years. And what I'm increasingly interested in is augmenting machine learning and big data and all of the technical capacity that actually gives you with behavioral science, and specifically like nudging and how you could use that within a public policy space. So one of the things Ryan was talking about was the evolution of the human species, and so way back when, before we had king states, we had feudal systems that were prior to that, and then basically along came the printing press, and that was one of the first big paradigm shifts in terms of technology. And that came up with the idea of, the pen is mightier than the sword. I think what Ryan was alluding to maybe is WhatsApp is mightier than the sword at some point, which I think is true, but it also begs the question, what makes WhatsApp powerful, for example, and as this example of technical product, is that it allows people to communicate, right? And that goes across multiple technical projects. It allows people to scale their efforts. But one of the things that it also has implications to is who actually owns the data that underpins WhatsApp. And one of the things that we've seen recently, with this Facebook saga, is that is becoming more and more of a question that people need to deal with. I work specifically in the public health sector, so I've been dealing with this quite a lot. And how do you take health data, treat that in an ethical framework? And that's a very complex question. Sharing data doesn't necessarily mean that that's unethical. It can also be unethical not to share data. So how do we start addressing this question of ethics, what it means to consent to share data? This is one of the things that's coming out now in the GDPR in the EU, where data is actually owned by the individuals, at least under that framework. That's completely the opposite to what you're seeing in the US, China. India has, a friend of mine who was involved in drafting this, has just put out a white paper with how they're going to approach data sovereignty and how they're going to try and leverage that within India. So they're trying to keep data within the borders because there's sovereign risks with data residing outside of the country. These are things that I think really need to be addressed and thought through very carefully in South Africa, very close to home. We've got a new regulatory legislative framework coming through, protection of personal information, and that's supposed to be enacted at the end of this year, I think. But it doesn't give very good regulatory guidance as to how you do that. And so what is going to happen, I think, is that we're going to see this growing, under this paradigm, we're going to see this growing disconnect between high-income countries who are able to carefully think through how they use data, as well as take data from other places with their products. And they are going to disproportionately benefit from that, unless we actually within middle-income countries or low-income countries actually start to think about how we make use of those frameworks. I had a couple of other points which I don't want to take too much time on, but I think what Ryan was talking about as well is how do you integrate these kind of primal codings that we have in ourselves. I don't want to put too many words in your mind, but how do we take those and start moving into the upper brain territory? I'm not as familiar, no favour with that, but I think there's a lot of evidence and a lot of research that has been done specifically in the behavioral science and neuroscience and those spaces that show the irrationality of humans. So, the traditional economic model, people make rational decisions. They say, oh, okay, if I earn more for doing this, I'm going to do that. But actually what you see when you ask people questions is that they don't always behave rationally. So if I said to somebody, I'll give you R1, but only if somebody else says that you can have that R1. And that other person knows that you've been given R1. What you find is that person will say, you're not going to get that R1 unless you give me some of that. Even though there's no rational reason for that. That's a concept of fairness, and there's also these concepts of reciprocity. If I give you something, you tend to feel that you want to give me something back. And so how do you actually take those ideas, pull that all into this big data era, and actually use that to benefit people? And so that's where I'm interested in. So I'm really interested to see how this panel discussion goes. I just wanted to put a few more seeds in there for discussion, because I think this question of data ownership is one of the areas that is not spoken about yet in South Africa and really needs to be thought about, otherwise we're going to have issues.
Awesome. Without further ado, if the panelists can just come forward. Megan, we're going to quickly introduce you as well. We're just going to set up in a minute or so. If you want to have something to, I think there's some food. We'll do it afterwards. Okay, we're going to do it afterwards. Okay, so just give us a sec. We got it. Okay, cool.